Welcome to Our Stars Speak. My name is Christina Miner, and I'm the host of this podcast. And today we have Nakia Madison, who is a licensed clinical social worker. But before we begin, I want to make for sure that everyone remember that this is not a platform where we are giving information for you to go against your medical team or your mental health team. We're just simply here to share our stories and to give some education. So without further ado, Miss Nakia, I'm just so thankful that you're here today. And many of you obviously probably don't know, but Nakia is a friend of mine, but we also have been co-workers in the past in the mental health field. And I'm just so thankful for her to be able to come on and share all her knowledge today. So I'm thankful you're here.
I'm glad to be here and to be a part of this process for you. Seeing it from beginning to now has been exciting.
Yeah, you've been there for sure. I would like, let's see. So I know Nakia Madison, LCSW, and they're going to get to know you as well in that capacity. But who is Nakia Madison? Who's Nakia? If you can just elaborate.
I think that Nakia is a little bit of a lot. Um, if you know me, you know I'm real fun. I'm laid back. I like to tell jokes. I'm very passionate about the people I care about and the things that I do. Um, I like to think of myself as being a round the way fillet. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia, and I stay true to my Norfolk roots. But I like helping people, and so that at the core of who I am, I enjoy helping people and helping people like be the best that they can be. So that doesn't matter if I'm working with them, if it's somebody in my personal life. I enjoy helping people be the best that they can be.
Okay. So where did you go to school? If you could tell us a little bit about your schooling and why you became a licensed clinical social worker. Like what made you kind of gravitate that? Because I heard you say you
So
like people, love being around people and helping them.
So I went to Virginia Union University for my undergraduate degree, which is a bachelor's in social work. Um, just wanted to get away from home and go to a historically black college, and Union kind of gave me that. My first choice was Howard University. Union gave me a scholarship. My grandma said, "We're going to Richmond." So I went to Union, Virginia Union. I left there. I worked for a year and said, I think I need more education so I can make more money. And I attended Virginia Commonwealth University, where I earned my master's in social work in their advanced standing program. So if you have a bachelor's in social work, you can go to a couple of different schools and do the advanced standing track, meaning it'll take you 1 year to get your master's, because
Oh,
that foundation year you already have it because you have a bachelor's in social work.
okay.
So I was able to earn my master's in a year, and then I got into the human services field, working with children primarily in the
Mhm.
beginning. And as I kept working and kept growing and kept moving, I moved up the ladder in the companies that I was working for. And the next step was to become licensed. And so with the changes in Medicaid, they were requiring people to have more experience, and becoming licensed was one of those requirements. And so I'm kind of competitive, and so people around me were becoming licensed, and I was like, well, if they can do it, and I know I can do it. And
Right.
so I had the supervision for free with my job, and so I became licensed. And to be honest with you, everything seems like it was like predestined for my life, because all I knew was that I was getting this degree in social work. I actually went into a depression before I graduated college because I didn't know what the next step was. It had
Oh,
always been
wow.
school. So it was just like, okay, what am I about to do and how does this look? And literally life just kind of fell into place. So I say it was me being competitive, but I think it was more
Mhm.
like a preordained God situation where it was like, okay, you need this, you need this, you need this, and the steps just kind of came together. So that's how I ended up becoming a licensed clinical social worker. Then in 2016, I went back to school, but this time I went to seminary, and I ended up earning a
Wow.
master's of divinity. And it's just kind of funny to me, because social work to me is like a ministry. So the social
Right.
work ministry kind of works together. And in that capacity, I'm an ordained minister at my church, which is the St. Paul's Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. Lance D. Watson
Okay.
Sr. is our chief human. So,
All
uh,
right.
it's funny because it seems like a lot, but really it's an overlapping. And
Right.
so everywhere I go, the purpose is the same. It's just done under
Mhm.
a different title, if it makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. So when it comes to now, where did you go to school for that, for your divinity? I don't think I heard.
I went back to Virginia Union, and I went to the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology.
Okay. And when you okay, so while you were in Union though, didn't you join something? A sorority of some sort?
Oh, yes. And when I was an undergraduate at Union, I pledged Delta Sigma
Yeah.
Theta. I'm also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Yes, I know you like to get, y'all y'all are on it for those shout outs. So I want to make for sure I respect that. But yeah, so that's good. And plus, I wanted to pledge Delta when I was in school. I should go ahead and pledge anyway. But anyhow, so that's so good to know how much you care about people. And so today I asked you to come on to do just that, to kind of let us know a little bit about mental health and how it affects individuals who are going through breast cancer. As everyone knows, Our Scars Speak is about the scars that we carry as patients to try to help other people get through their wounds, but also not as patients, but even caregivers and professionals in this profession to be able to help people. So today that's your, you and I have had private conversation about post-traumatic stress syndrome. Yeah. And I really want to kind of and hopefully you'll come back again. But I really would like to kind of hit on that today because there's so many stigmas out there, because a lot of people think that PTSD is just for war veterans who've gone off to war, or just someone who's fought in war. And we know that that's kind of where it originated from. However, we also know deeper than that. And so I kind of want you to, first of all, kind of explain what PTSD means first.
Okay. So PTSD, people use it a lot because they just throw the letters out there, but it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's exactly what it means.
Right.
Post, after, traumatic, a trauma, stress. So it's stress that results from you experiencing a traumatic event. A lot of people, I think it did become kind of popular because of war and people going to war and being in the military, but PTSD can be experienced by anybody who has experienced trauma. Trauma includes being diagnosed with a chronic illness. Trauma includes experiencing a miscarriage. Trauma can include living in an area that has a lot of high crime and violence. So the trauma is not just always boxed in. And I think it's kind of interesting because of certain labels that are put on different diagnoses and things like that. We just look at it in one way, but we don't account for it kind of being across a broad spectrum of people that experience PTSD. And so it's very serious and it's very significant, because what it's basically saying is your biology is shifted because of this traumatic experience. So if you think about it as in going on a trip on the highway, if you ever pay attention, you have the signs that tell you about the exits, but you also have smaller signs that are called mile markers.
Right.
I look at traumatic events or just events in general as mile markers in your life, especially ones that cause a significant change. Some people can have PTSD from their birth experience.
Wow.
Being pregnant, having a baby, it totally shifts, adjusts, changes a life, right? So any event that totally changes the course of your life, positively or negatively, most of the time people just look at the negative side, can cause you to have PTSD. And what happens is there's this button that gets hit or flipped, a switch that gets flipped, and it's like life is no longer the same. You don't think the same way about things anymore. You don't do things the same way, maybe because physically you're different. Right. You may have physical reminders of what you went through, especially with your organization, Our Scars Speak. A lot of people who suffer with breast cancer end up with a scar of some sort. The procedures that you undergo leave scars. And the thing about it is, a lot of those procedures you have to go through alone. And so that's something that you can't get away from, because you're alone with your thoughts, and you're dealing with this procedure and what it feels like afterwards. So again, all of that. So for some people, October is triggering because it reminds them of the whole situation where we're celebrating. Some people get triggered. Some people may get triggered by certain smells, different medications, or just times of the year. So PTSD is all of that. For some people, it looks like depression. For some people, it's high levels of anxiety. But the depression and anxiety can come off as looking like they're very irritated and they easily, disgruntled. They're like, oh, her attitude is so nasty. That's her anxiety or her depression manifesting in the form of her being irritable.
Okay.
Some of the treatments that you all have to undergo also can change you physically and cause people to be irritable or uncomfortable, which then kind of leads a person to feeling that way, and sometimes maybe isolating themselves from others because they don't want to be bothered with people. So all of that is PTSD. You can have flashbacks and remembering different procedures, or flashbacks of remembering when you were first diagnosed. It's so many different things that kind of come into play that are physically, mental and emotional, and it's just all, it's too broad to kind of just try to put it all in one compact kind of box.
So when you were talking about PTSD, which I had it all, I think I got the letters used at the beginning. So excuse me for that. But when you were talking about PTSD, I know in studying, and I'm sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they talk about how even with trauma, it can like alter our brain. And I know that's more like neurological studying that we've done in school, but I know that's important because a lot of people don't understand, like, they may like, I just can't get it together cognitively. It feels like I'm impaired. And it's like, no, like your brain studies are showing like your brain can actually change a little bit. And I don't know the depth of all that information because it's more neuroscience, but I didn't know if you could allude to that.
So the trauma is like a shock to the system, right? And sometimes when people's systems are shocked, different things happen. Sometimes they have strokes, sometimes they have heart attacks, right? Sometimes they can have anxiety attacks that just become so overwhelming they get stuck. Well, your brain, in a sense, is like rewired. I have not had breast cancer, but I had COVID before I had old COVID before the vaccine happened. And so through the process of experiencing that, I went through a bit of a brain fog. Like I would have times where I just couldn't remember what I was saying, or I would become so overwhelmed at the thought of leaving the house. Like I didn't even realize I was in the house isolated for so long until one day I realized I'm like, dang, wonder what it feels like outside. But even now as a COVID survivor, in a sense, I am still very, very aware of my surroundings, hearing people cough, hearing people sneeze. I still wear a mask because I still don't kind of trust my environment. That's something that's totally different than I was pre-COVID or pre-pandemic, because pre-pandemic, everything just seemed to be open. Now we're hypersensitive about a lot of different things. And so that's the same with breast cancer. You're very hypersensitive about everything going on around you because now, in a sense, your body is different. And in that difference, your health is compromised. So you could be susceptible to getting sick a little bit easier if you're going through chemo. It's a lot of stuff that comes from participating in radiation that a lot of people don't understand. And so in going through those processes, each one can be a step of trauma. So you get the diagnosis, that's trauma. You then find out what the next step is, whether it's surgery, radiation, or chemo. That's trauma number 2, right? So because you're hearing it, you then go through the process of the actual treatment. That's more trauma because now you in a sense are now physically feeling it. And if you think about it, all of these things are things you can't control. So now you had this sense of safety and this sense of familiarity that you thought you once knew, and now nothing you can trust because you didn't expect to even just get the diagnosis. So that's a part of the trauma too. Like nothing is the same anymore. And so it's like, well, what can I trust? Or who can I trust? Or what does this look like? Should I be hopeful? Because I could very well just go back to the doctor and he could keep telling me things are wrong. So it's a lot that goes along with that. And so that's why it is very important that people who have family members going through breast cancer or any other long-term chronic illness, they provide support because that
Right.
person is really not only dealing with it physically, but mentally and emotionally also.
So before we get into that, because we're definitely going to talk about that, because you've been a support to a few friends with caregiving, to which was just mind blowing what you've done for some of your friends. But before that, so you have the trauma of the diagnosis and the treatment, and then if you have complications, then that adds on to it. So with that being said, and you have all this trauma going on mentally, I call them mental scarring and physical scarring, actual physical scarring. How can that play a role? Because I hear a lot of people talking about like they have headaches and, they never had headaches before. Can that also play a part on our physical aspect? And if so, sometimes what does that look like for a person?
So if a person is going through depression or anxiety that's like really severe, significant, it can impair their ability to heal because it's like, oh, what's the point of doing this? Because it's not gonna. I'm a very big believer in speaking things into existence.
Right.
So even when things look bad, I say, oh, I'm gonna be, or it's gonna be, I'm gonna be healed. This is, this is not the end. And I
Right.
think a lot of people don't believe it, but I think the perspective that you have and how you move through things, any kind of trauma in life, kind of makes the prognosis a little bit better, or at least it makes the experience of your quality of life better as you go through it.
Right.
So a lot of that is just really trying to remain hopeful, but that's why the support is needed, right? And if you don't have people around you that can support you, I'm a firm advocate of going to therapy. I
Right.
don't understand why I think many doctors are medical and they don't kind of consider it, but I think a part of the treatment plan should include some form of therapy, even if it's somebody that comes to speak to you while you're in the process of having your chemo done. You get
Yeah.
just to kind of check in and say, hey, how are you doing? How are things going at home? Because that diagnosis and having that treatment, it affects how you work. It affects how
Right.
you are able to interact with your family members, go on vacation. It affects a lot of things. It changes how you look physically. And so, and going through all of that, I just think if they added that mental health piece to it, it could make it a little bit easier because they can have somebody who understands and kind of
Right.
help the talk through process what is happening, because it's a lot and a lot of people will suppress it and just I
Right.
just need to get through this treatment and I'm be fine, I'm be okay, and it's like they're not okay.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love so much about the doctor that I had, because she a huge advocate for support. So she's linked with Here for the Girls, but it's only for the age of 51 and under.
Mhm.
However, they have a psychoeducational program. They have social workers on staff,
Right.
um, which is excellent. But also the other aspect to Dr. Spina, and I think maybe some other hospitals now too, but they have social workers that they can link you to. But the caveat to that is a lot of people don't have the insurance that might can cover those things. So that's why I'm like, if you can't get a therapist, and try to get a really good mentor, coach, somebody, like you said, some type of support. But of course, therapy would be ideal because they're of the mental aspect to everything and the trauma that you go through. I think that's just absolutely, because it doesn't just affect the patient, it affects the whole family. And then that's
Right.
where guilt can play in. And you
Right.
got grief going on because you've lost your breast, maybe. And that's a whole nother, whole
Right.
other thing. But I'm sure that can be within the PTSD, correct?
It is because again, life is not the same.
Right.
So there's a grieving process of the life that you once had
Right.
versus where you are now. Again, we're all going through it. We're still in the midst of the pandemic, but life now is not the same. And
Right.
and to be honest with you, it's probably going to never return to what we thought was normal. We are now living in the new normal. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting because a lot of times when you say grief, people only associate grief with a death. it's a loss of anything, a loss of a job, a loss of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
a loss of an idea that you
Right.
thought, and then you just a loss of the way you perceive the person, and then you found out in reality they're not that. So the grief is also a part of the PTSD. You have some people that just say, why bother? I'm not fighting anymore. And then you have some people who get help and support and they say, okay, this is hard, but I can do it. So you really want to give as much support as you can so that that person can, they're already physically feeling down, but we want to mentally lift them as much as
Right.
possible.
Right. And I think that's, and like you said, is so important. And even though there are some patients who they feel in their spirit is they want, it's time for them to transition. And that's a whole nother, a whole
Right,
nother process for the
right,
family as well as for themselves. And it's
right,
like they're not giving up. They just feel like this is
right,
it. And I've accepted that. And I know because maybe they talk to God or whomever they serve and they
right.
feel like this is part of their journey and this is where they are. And I think that should be, respected too. But there's a therapy piece that can come with that too, with that transition, I think.
I having recently having a family member to be on hospice,
Mm-hmm.
it is definitely something. I think chaplains come in more often when it comes to
Yeah.
hospice, and they kind of provide that kind of counseling in a sense. But in my church that I grew up in, there was a young lady. She had 6 kids, and she ended up with colon cancer. And the family participated in counseling as a family to prepare the kids for her
Right.
transition because they were young. Like I think her oldest might have been in high school, just in high school, and the youngest was like maybe 3. So that
Wow.
I, but I when I and that happened when I was a teenager, and I was just thinking in my mind even then, like that was super smart for them to
Yeah.
do that because one, that even though that person is dying, they still, some of them still mentally are here, they just can't physically move or
Right.
physically deal with it. And even if they're not, you still have family members that are dealing with the loss of a family member and then watching it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what kind of took me out because my aunt had been married to her husband for 70 years and he
Wow.
literally was by her side until the end, and I'm like, wow, he is literally every day
Mm-hmm.
watching her die. So that was a lot for me visiting. So I
Right.
know it was a lot for him to be in the throes of it. And so we really have to make sure, especially when we're dealing with people that are a little older, that we reach out to them because they're probably not going to ask.
Right.
I know a lot of older people is like, well, this is a part of life and this is just what happens and we just deal with it. No, we need to talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. It's
Right.
okay to process it. It's okay to have feelings about it. It's okay to
Yeah.
talk about those feelings and ask for support when you need it.
And I think that goes back to stigmas
Right,
within different cultures and
right,
society as a whole of, oh, if you see a therapist, you're going crazy or you are crazy. Even if you tell someone, I remember when I was going through treatment, well, surgeries and stuff, and I was like, darn it, I cannot get acclimated. I think I even told you, I was like, I can't get acclimated. I went back to work, I stressed out, I was crying all the time. And I was like, I just can't adjust. It's like everything that I knew, it was hard for me to even remember how to function properly,
mhm,
even on my job. And I was like, okay, I didn't go through chemo because they have a thing called chemo brain. But
right,
now they're trying to, I've read a lot about how they're trying to just say it's cognitive impairment as a whole. Even though chemo does, of course, I'm not negating that.
right.
Chemo definitely does cause a lot more damage to the person's physical body. But this whole just can't remember and just can't get reacclimated. I think
So
it comes from all of that. But you tell somebody and you're like, oh, you say you're going crazy. It's like, no, I'm not saying I'm going crazy. It's just I'm in a different space.
So let's be clear. You went from having what you consider to be a normal day-to-day life to being diagnosed with an illness that you didn't know from day to day how it was going to affect you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You then had to go through several medical procedures that were quite uncomfortable. You went through a surgery that removed a part of you from that society tells you makes you who you are as a
Right.
person. And then you go through all of that and go back to work. You were spending every day trying to make sure you lived. So coming back into an environment, it's like, this is stupid. Like, that's the least of your concerns, trying to figure out a schedule and handle. And so what happens is it shifts your priorities.
It does.
So
Yes.
now some
Yes.
stuff that was a priority, that was like, you kind of looking at it like, that's pretty stupid. Like, I need you to get it together, because tighten up, because in your, I'm trying to live.
Right. In the
I'm
middle
trying
of a
to live.
pandemic for me,
Right,
like, and for some
right,
other people as well. I'm
right,
not the only one, but I'm just saying
right,
in this
right,
conversation we're having, you have that. You have like what you went through, then everyday life. And then
right,
at that time, it was also a pandemic going on. So it's like, okay, over here, cancer's trying to kill me. Then I got COVID that I
right.
can't see. Over here, possibly trying to kill me. So I could see like, but I hear it so much, even now, and we're in a better place with the pandemic, but so many
Yeah.
cancer patients are just like, I cannot get it together with going back to work. Like, and they
But,
do. A lot
but,
of times jobs want you back in 2 weeks or a
yeah,
week, and it's
but you,
crazy.
but you can't. What I would say is that you are gonna have to be patient with yourself, and you're gonna have to advocate for yourself.
That's true.
A lot of jobs that provide insurance have what's called the Employee Assistance Program. Go through it's called EAP. Go through EAP and get you some therapy sessions. Most plans will give you 4 or 5 sessions. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to take them boom, boom, boom. You have 6 months to use the 4 or 5 sessions, right?
Right.
So go in, do the check-in, help yourself transit, help yourself deal with whatever it is you need to deal with. But you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to be realistic. We live in a society that just says, all right, get it together and snap out of it and come back.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that easy. And
Right.
usually the people that are telling you to do it are not people that have been through what you've been through. So
Yeah.
it makes it a little bit harder. And then it makes you question yourself, because you're thinking in your mind, like, I'm already experiencing feelings of inadequacy because what I've physically been through. Now I get back here, and now you're adding to the mental angst of it all, because now you kind of telling me I'm not performing, and I need this job because I need the insurance to pay for my treatments. I need the money for my
Right.
family. So it's all of this, like, kind of, and then with the pandemic, it caused us to have to be isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had people, I live alone, so I know what it was like to be
Right.
in my house by myself.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
I benefited from it with COVID because I didn't have to stay in one room,
Right.
but it's still a lot to be isolated. So if you're going through chemo, and chemo is wiping your slate clean of not only the chemo but also the things you need, you
Right.
have to be isolated so you don't get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot when you can't
Yeah.
hug people and you're used to hugging people. You can't go and eat dinner. You don't have your taste, and you just don't have the energy to do it. That's a
Right.
lot. So
It is. And that's what, and it just breaks my heart. And I mean, I can relate to them, of course, but it just breaks my heart to see, just how, because you go from being this person who's outgoing, or, you're the one who's the caregiver most of the times. And now you're having to have people to care for you. That's a hard transition. And then you have to add work back on top of it. And it's just like, yeah, like you say, your priorities have shifted and they've changed. And what used to be important is not important to you anymore. It's more of survival of the fittest at this point. Like, I'm here to work because of maybe what I need. But yeah, so I'm thankful you shared about that, because so many women, I'm sure men out there as well, they go through that, trying to acclimate back in to where they used to be, knowing they're not the same anymore. And that's very
and from and
dramatic
from
too.
people on the outside, they might think, oh, they super ambivalent or lax about, but it's like they were just fighting for their life. So
Right.
so waiting in line for a copy machine or dealing with the issue that may seem mundane, but something you got to deal with, is just like, I don't have time for this. Like, I mean, honestly, because
Yeah.
think about when you're fighting an illness, time is of the essence. because you don't know how much more of it you have, right? So
Yeah.
every day you waking up and you like, okay, what is today gonna bring? So now you value time in a different way.
Yep.
So then you get, and you just start looking at some things. And I know for myself, I blocked a lot of people. I just decided not to deal with some people because I'm like, I don't have time for that.
When you say deal with people, I think we really need to hit on that aspect of PTSD and all this trauma and trying to reacclimate. Your mind has changed. Now, what do I do as a person? What's some tips that you can help a person? Because, we all have coping skills that we could, do you have any things that we could put to our toolbox to help us in those moments? Because, like you stated, we went through all that. However, a lot of people don't realize, they'll tell you, oh, girl, you're good. You're cancer free now. Keep on living, keep on going. It's like, wait a minute. I don't want it to come back, but it's always the possibility of it, a recurrence.
Right.
And that's always lingering. So during this time of prayerfully never seeing cancer again, but still trying to live a life, what are some coping skills or some tips you can give the audience to kind of like maybe help them, whether it's meditation, exercise? I don't know what you want to give, but what are some things that you could kind of share about that, and maybe some things you've used?
Spirituality is really big for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not saying religion, I'm saying spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have a lot more in common than we have separate. So that's just, for me, it's faith. So I'm like, I believe in God, and I believe there's a higher power. I believe that higher power is in control. So I have, through my illness, I realized I'm not in control of anything. That was the first PTSD block. Like, I'm not in control. And I thought I had done very good with being controlling, but I'm like, no, you have not. So once I kind of regulated, like, this is a part of my journey, this part was already in place.
Mm-hmm.
I, instead of surrendering, I
Mm-hmm.
submitted. So I said, okay, this is the will for my life. I want to live. I desire to live. I'm going to try to make each of these days the best day that it can be for me with what I can control.
Right.
So a lot of people, and I think it's funny, I was like, oh, I don't believe it. Mindfulness is very important.
Yes.
Mindfulness grounds you. So what happens is, just based on the society we live in, we're either focusing on what happened in the past, usually mistakes, or we're rushing to get somewhere, because every time we accomplish something, people are like, what's next? What's next? You don't get to actually enjoy the accomplishment that you had.
Right.
Mindfulness is just a word for techniques where you stop moving forward and stop focusing backwards and just actually sit in the moment that you're in, and just you're a state of being. What is happening right now? What do I want to do? What do I want to smell? What do I want to feel? A lot of people like a technique called grounding. I'm real big on grounding. I come home and take my shoes off. My feet on the floor helps me to focus. So you got all the stuff running in your head. Instead of thinking of all those thoughts, just think of what you're doing right now. My feet are on the floor. My feet are on the carpet. The carpet feels, you're grounding yourself in the moment right now. Oh, I have the heater on and it's making my ankles warm. I like it. Oh, a lot of people use candles. The candles, the scent evokes a sense of calm. So you want to create spaces that are calming for you. I love the water. I will go to the beach and just sit and listen to the water, put my feet in the water. So what you want to do is just provide yourself with moments where you can just be calm. You can just stop everything and be calm. You have a space where it's just calm. Some people meditate. Sometimes people say, oh, my mind races so much, I can't meditate. You can get apps on your phones for guided meditations. I too did not believe that meditation worked, but
it does.
I realized that when I sit in that focus and I control my mind instead of letting my mind wander, it can work, and it actually is very soothing. So meditation is also good. I listen to a lot of music. Be mindful of the music that you're listening to.
Right.
You try to shoot them up, smack them, crack them in the head. You don't want to do that. You want to listen to music that kind of soothes you.
Or
Some
something
people
like, oh my God, my dog died. Like, you don't want to listen to
right.
anything that'll break. I always say that. Now, maybe somebody else that encouraged them,
Some,
but
I,
it doesn't do
I,
anything for me.
on the other hand, for me, I like gangster rap every now and again, and it gets me
Yeah.
kind of up and it gets me excited. But you have to be mindful of what emotion is evoking. Some people
Right.
say, music with words is too much. They listen to classical music, they listen to jazz,
Mm-hmm.
smooth jazz, whatever. You just have to be in control of what you can be in control of.
Right.
Have you a set day during the week that you do certain things that just are common? Maybe get a massage if you can stand it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or if you can afford it. I bought a bike, a real bike. So I like being outside, I like going walking outside.
Mm-hmm.
Get sun on your skin. That's something I know for
Yeah.
me. Um, there's a place that I work at and there are no windows. So every so often I'll go out with one of my coworkers and we call it the porch. It's just the front of the building. We go and stand outside and we let the sun hit our skin. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like it revives, it rejuvenates, you get the fresh air. It just does something to you. So you want to make sure that you control what you can and you
Right.
create these places and spaces that are soothing. Let your bedroom be one of those places. I
Mm-hmm.
personally don't have a TV in my bedroom because my bedroom is where I think. My bedroom is where I pray sometimes. My bedroom is where I just lay and try to hear from God. So my bedroom is a space that I have books there, but there is nothing else. I mean, I play music on my phone, but there's no TV or anything that's just kind of blaring in empty space. And
Right.
when I get ready in the morning, that's my time to just kind of be with me and prepare for my day and
Mm-hmm.
get myself in the right mode. So just being very conscious and really intentional about what you're doing and how you're doing it and the things you can control.
Right. And for me, that's kind of where, like, I like outdoors, but I love water. But for me, breast cancer brought, I heard you say far as like submitting and surrendering. And for me, I allow myself to be vulnerable. And through that vulnerability, I opened myself up to not only allowing people to help me, but trails. You remember I would go to the park, I would walk trails. That's when I started doing all these trail walks. And it really helped me to be outside, to look at God's creation, to take it in, to be thankful for those moments. Sometimes I would just sit in the middle of the trail, like on a bench, or not too many logs because I was scared snakes were but like on a bench, and just sit there with my eyes closed and be mindful of where I was in that moment, and close my eyes and just inhale the air, listen to the birds. And I found it to be so, so soothing. And it really was a part of my personal treatment plan. It was a part of like the trail walks, the neighborhood walks, aromatherapy, like you were talking about the candles. I started with candles. I ended up with different types of oils and stuff. So yeah, I totally 100% agree. And I know that like we talked about PTSD with patients, but we also know that, and you gave tips, which I'm thankful for, which I think anybody can use these tips that Nakia presented with us. But also with the caregiving part, it can be, you tapped into that a little bit. For I believe that PTSD can happen to them. I believe they can gain mental scars through
Yeah.
this. And I know that you have been an intricate part in, some of your friends' treatment plans, far as just being a caregiver and helping them. Because I think when we think of caregivers, a lot of people are thinking, oh, they must have lived with them and they must have took care of them. And that's not necessarily fully. You have multiple facets of caregiving. You have caregiving where they're in the home, caregiving where they may not be in the home 24 hours, but they go to treatment with the person, or they talk to them on the phone. That's part of caregiving to me. I could be wrong, but that's part of caregiving to me as well. And I know that you've been an intricate part of people's lives. So can you explain, did you obtain any type of mental scars from seeing this, or just like anything you needed to get through as far as a caregiver, or give any tips to caregivers that are out there, which to me are pretty similar to the tips you just gave? But do you want to elaborate on your experience with being friends of breast cancer survivors and thrivers, and what you've seen and what you did and witnessed?
So what was very interesting is I happen to know three people who all got diagnosed within a year or two's time. And it was just shocking to me because I was just like, how in the world is this happening
Mm-hmm.
on this scale and on this level? And it was interesting because what I did is what I usually do. I do for others what I would want to be done for me in that situation.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because I grew up in a neighborhood that was very violent, and I witnessed a lot outside of my home. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of funny because certain things that should bother me in a certain way, I have a very high tolerance for trauma, if that makes sense.
Right. Right.
So um one of my friends, I went to chemo. Now she had support, her mom was there, but I just was like, I would want one of my friends to be there. So I would come, and I had the first shift, and then I would have to go to work, and then another friend would come in and do like the other half of it.
Right.
And we sat and talked and got to the point where the people at the hospital already knew she was gonna need a bigger space than normal because we was pulling those chairs up and we were, engaging. I think it helped. It was kind of funny because I didn't think about my trauma. I was more so concerned, and I do this in a lot of situations. I go in and I'm caring so much about the person that I'm not even considering how what they're dealing with is affecting me. So like I
Right.
really kind of was there for her and her mom
Mm-hmm.
because I just thought in my mind as a mother, it has to be hard to see your baby go through that. So,
Absolutely.
and I learned a lot about chemo. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but it didn't look anything like what I thought it was going to look. And
Right.
then we asked the nurses a lot of questions, and they gave education on why they do things the way they do and what it does and all that stuff. And so that was really interesting to me. I planned on doing it for another friend, but then COVID happened, and
Mm-hmm.
so that friend has an identical twin sister, and I knew her
Wow.
sister was definitely gonna be there, but her sister has a job where she has to travel for work. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm just gonna show up because and I'll definitely be there on the days that the sister can't be there. But with her going with us being in the pandemic, she had to do that by herself.
Wow.
But there was a lot of video chatting that was happening in that friendship circle. So we had a whole circle with that.
But that's
And
part of caregiving, though, like
yeah,
the video
we had a
chats and
circle.
stuff.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
had a circle and we were checking in, and both of those girls ended up women, I'm sorry, ended up doing chemo and radiation. So
Okay.
it was so with each of you, I was seeing different phases of the same thing. And with Minor being the person she is, she was giving me all the education. So I was understanding what was going on with them and like having conversations with them. And they looking at me like, why do you know that? But I was really able to see three different treatment plans go
Right.
and see all the options that you have and understand why the options were picked and see
Mm-hmm.
now all of you are on the other side of it working to kind of grow and thrive afterwards through the process of it all. So it was just a interesting, it was just like it's like mental illness. You can give three people the same diagnosis, but it will manifest in a different way in each of them. And so that's
Wow.
what it's the same with PTSD. You can have three different people that suffer with PTSD, and it looks very different in each of them.
Right.
So for me, breast cancer was looking very different. And then what I ended up finding out was that my great grandmother had a
Mm-hmm.
mastectomy. She had one of her breasts removed, and then my grandmother had an older sister, and I'm just like, why is this information not being talked about in this family? Like, why don't you know? So I think I've opened the door to a lot of conversations about health and supporting each other in my family. So I
Right.
um so when it comes to being a caregiver, it's kind of funny. I just think that's what I do. Like honestly, I feel like that's what I do when I facilitate outpatient therapy sessions. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I do when I support my patients at the methadone clinic. I feel like everywhere I go, that's like an assignment for me is to be there and to. I feel like I go into hell with people.
Right.
And I kind of sit there with them and be like, okay, so when we getting out? Oh, we're gonna sit here a little bit longer. Okay, let's talk about it while we're here. But I I I'm only realizing here recently that I do have a little bit of secondary trauma, and that's when it gets triggered, like something triggers something. So I have
Mm-hmm.
a therapist. So I'm a therapist with a therapist,
And
and that
that's what it should be.
and the young lady that owns the practice I work for, suggested it from the beginning. She was like, you're going to get triggered. There's going to be some things. You're going to be helping people through some
Mm-hmm.
processes. It's going to open up some stuff for you that's not resolved. And so I have a therapist, and I have very real I know my therapist from somewhere else. I said, don't look at me as this professional person. I am a person on your couch, and I need you to address me as such. I don't want you to come at
Right.
me with theories. I need you to talk to me like you would talk to anybody else who would need bare bones understanding, because I'm really here and I'm being authentically me. So a lot of what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
is undoing unhealthy habits, because some of my secondary trauma that I was like, I don't know. I know I'm an emotional eater. So I
Mm-hmm.
get ice cream, I get a tea, I get a slice of cake from Publix or somewhere else. I eat ice cream. So I'm trying to shift and adjust. And when those things pop up, say, okay, what happened that led to this?
And I'm glad you mentioned that about eating, even though somebody probably like, well, what does that have to do with anything? But it's important because, like you said, it can look different in other people.
Right.
So we normally think PTSD, sadness, depression, anxiety, anger. But some
And
people don't think about bulimia,
right.
anorexia. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't think about eating
But
disorders, which are a plethora of them. But
but
yeah,
here's what it's all about: control. So
right.
with PTSD, there are things I cannot control, and it has sent me into this spiral. So what people do, they do things that they can control. And with some of that, some people clean, some people are they have obsessive compulsive disorder where everything just has to be in a certain way. Don't move it because
Mm-hmm.
they're controlling what they can control. I have a patient that has been through a significant amount of trauma that I see at my clinic. And I was the first person to sit with her to explain to her why she's experiencing what she's experiencing and how to look at it. And she was just like, these were just things that happened to me. And I'm like, yes, they were, but this is what this is, and this is
Right.
why. Because when I say if one little thing is out of order for her, she goes into this whole total emotional meltdown.
And I think that's so important. I'm so glad you brought all this up because there are so many people that are being diagnosed with multiple diagnoses, but
Right.
it's almost like their therapists or whoever's diagnosing them are not, they're kind of negating all the other trauma that they've been through and just looking at the now. And they're not considering past traumas that could be PTSD going on versus like all these 5, 6 different diagnoses.
Well, this is why you have to shop around for your therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, each therapist is coming to the table with their experience.
And they're also coming to the table with their own theory that they practice in, correct? That may not be
Yes.
tapping
So
into the past.
so the thing is, I'm doing this because when I was younger, I wish I had somebody to da da da, right?
Right.
So they're already coming to the table with a perspective on something, right? Me personally, I feel like things don't happen overnight, so we're not gonna get through it overnight. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm real big with letting my clients know this is a marathon, not a sprint. And if we get into a conversation about something and we hit like a hot spot and it's too much, I let my clients know, raise your hand and say you need to tap out, because
Right.
we don't have to, it's nothing. I don't feel like, it's good for me to know, but I don't feel like, oh my God, this is such a big thing. We're just going to push through. No,
Right.
I am a firm believer that you need to tell me that we need to stop. I don't have a problem with stopping. And I let them know I'm gonna stop, but I'm gonna process what you're feeling in this moment, because you're with me for an hour, 55 minutes. You got a whole day that you have to finish, and you
Right.
got a week that you have to finish. And I don't want to have triggered something in you that just
Mm-hmm.
destroys like the rest of your week. So for me, it's a human process. Like, okay,
Right.
over time, this is what happened. And so now it's going to take some time to develop the skills. So again, you're dealing with human beings. So human beings are going to come from the perspective of what they know and what they're interested in. So you might have somebody that leans more on a certain diagnosis because in their mind, it's just like, oh, I've been a student of Freud's and he said da da da
Right.
da 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 da. It's it's so many different ways to interpret the
Mm-hmm.
diagnostic
Right.
manual. There are so many different ways to, so it really depends on experience. For me, there are some people that will call some people antisocial. I'm real big. If somebody
Yeah.
is oppositional or anti, I am very leery of giving those kind of
Yeah.
diagnoses because that label, how, my question all the time is, how did this person become the person that they are? If you constantly was violated, if you constantly was brought up in environments where people did not respect the law and you had to do that to survive, are you antisocial, or is that what you were taught? You
Right.
don't have a different kind. So until you get to school, there's no difference in what you know, what you understand. And that's like the rest of us. As you continue to live and you get exposure to different things, you don't realize that some of the stuff that you're doing is
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional,
Right.
right? So that's what the whole. So for me with therapy is like, okay, I'm here to help you open that can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them gonna die. We're gonna go ahead and throw them away. But then I'm gonna also help you put the worms that you still have back in the can and put the lid back on until you come back and you want to take those worms out again. So again, I think a lot of people are so afraid of what they're gonna encounter when you come to therapy. If you allow the process to work, it's gonna be some tough
Right.
stuff. But that's why the therapist is there, because the
Mm-hmm.
therapist is there to support you. But
Yeah.
it's all in what you open,
I think that, whew, that's so important to know your therapist, know about
Right.
them, what their thoughts are, like far as how to treat you, because well, we've seen some people, we've seen some people out here.
I can speak from my own personal experience. I had a therapist, beautiful person.
Mm-hmm.
She was an atheist. I'm coming in my sessions talking about the Holy Spirit and what I'm
Right.
believing God is gonna do for my life. That's not that's not her that's not her belief. Now here's what I'm gonna say. I'm a Christian. I have clients who believe in all types of things. I don't have to convert to what you believe in order to help you,
Right.
because to me, we all believe in a God.
Mm-hmm.
You might call yours Allah, Jehovah, whatever, but we all, to me, even some of my clients who believe in horoscopes and stones, I ask them, okay, help me to understand what that
Mm-hmm.
means to you. And we just go from there. I don't have to go back stones. Like, so my thing is, we're all human. We can kind of meet each other at
Right.
some level. But when I feel like what you're doing or what you believe is infringing upon what you're doing with me, then that's when I have to make a change, because that's not,
Right.
one
No.
time, maybe a couple of times, okay, this
Yeah.
isn't a good fit. It's like trying to wear shoes that's too small.
Yeah, because you have some therapists that they can literally, and I think you definitely are one of them, can literally counsel anyone from an atheist to a Christian to a Buddhist to whatever. I think, or LGBTQ plus I
Mhm.
mean A plus, sorry. They can just counsel anybody. But then you got some who say they can, but they really can't. They bring in their biases, or either they, like you said, they
Mhm.
project their thoughts and their views onto you. And I think people need to be very, very careful of that.
Because technically, going into therapy is a hard thing to have to do.
Right.
But then to get there for the professional to be like, no, you don't feel like that. No, I
Uh-huh.
do. I do. Like literally, she was saying something to me one time, and I was like, she said, Nakia, you're nodding your head, but you look like you ain't paying attention to nothing I'm saying. I said, no, I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate it, but I just don't agree with that, because I'm believing that God is gonna do this for me.
Right.
So
And
I'm not gonna verbally say, okay, I agree, when that's
right.
not what I'm lining up with.
Right.
And it's not an argument. And
Uh-uh.
for some therapists, they might go toe to toe with you. She was just trying to give me alternatives. And I was like, I hear your alternative, but I
And
know what
that's
I'm doing.
when that I think as a therapist, counselor in training, such as myself, I think that's when we have to say, okay, this is the way that they feel. That's their belief.
Right,
We
right.
have to respect that. Or if not, to me, to kind
And
of
not and
question what
not
you're
be
doing in his profession.
and not being sarcastic about it. Because some people
No,
are like,
not at
well,
all.
how's that working for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I might be thinking that, but I'm just like, okay, so okay, what's working and what's not? I'm
Right.
gonna process it with you. And if you still choose to do it, that's fine, because that's your choice. I'm
Right.
not here to change you. I'm here to help you figure things out. Like I
Right.
tell my clients, I'm not Ayala. I'm not trying to fix your life. I see myself as a companion on your journey. You pick me up in your car, you give me the phone that you already put the directions on, and I tell you what's going on the phone and make suggestions.
Yeah.
Anything moving forward is on you. But what do you think? I don't think anything. What do you think? It's not about what I think, because once they get into what you think and it don't work, well, you told me and this is not my therapy session is what I think. This is your therapy session.
Yeah, because there's accountability piece that clients need to understand as well. Like, you're not here to live their life for them or to tell them exactly you need to do this or that. I think with guidance and encouragement and support and helping them process things is one thing, but when you're actually telling someone what to do, that's a danger in that.
I'm a deflect. What do you think?
And then also another thing that I think is important, because I had this experience and I was like, oh my God. I had seen a therapist one time and she was rushing me through my trauma of my past. And I looked up the first 2 sessions, I did pretty good, but that third session, it was like everything came back. It was like a Pandora's box was open. And I had feelings that I hadn't had in a long time that were not good feelings. And I knew they were dark and could take me down a very bad path. But I realized something with going to her and then later processing with you. She also didn't end the session correctly. Like, she didn't ensure that I was in a safe space before I left the session. And then I had to go deal with some of the people that had actually were the issue. And that was traumatic. Like, that was traumatic. So I already had some other trauma. And then now you're kind of like making me revisit it faster than I wanted to. And then not making sure that I got out of the session properly.
Or I always, when I have a heavy session with clients, I'll say, I would like to stop right here. And I would like us to plan what the rest of your day and the rest of your week is going to look like.
Right.
Who do you have that you can call for support? Like, what is it going to look like? How are you feeling? Do you have to come in contact with this person we just talked about?
Right.
How is that going to look? And so that comes back to me saying, I block people. Everybody does not need to have access to you at certain points and periods of your life. And you have to be okay with setting those boundaries. A lot of people do not like setting boundaries, but you have to do it for your well-being and the well-being of others, because you don't want to lash out at them. You really don't mean it, but some people, they mean well, but they overstep. They overstep. And you have to back them up and just say, hey, right now, this is not what I need. I thank you, but this is not what I need.
Yeah, I think that's so true too. Like, when you're going through like breast cancer or something traumatic, like in the process of going through it, you have to sometimes, and I think some people feel guilty about saying, hey, look, I can't right now. Like, I can't answer that phone right now. I'm hurting. Like, I'm literally on narcotics and that's why I'm irritable or whatever the case may be. But you have to be okay with saying enough is enough. I need a moment. Right. I just need a moment. And so I think that's awesome.
And people need to respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think sometimes that's when people are like, I'm trying to help you as much as I can. And it's like, you're not ungrateful.
And I appreciate all that you're doing. Can I call you back when I'm ready for that?
That's a good way of putting it.
Everything is I totally understand. I appreciate it. Can I call you when I'm ready? Right now, I'm not ready. It's not you. I'm real big on, it's not you, it's me. I'll throw anything on me as long as I'm getting out of it. Like, I don't care. I'm like, it's not you, it's me. But that's something that's very important. And my thing is, that takes, because they're like, I'm trying to help, you're not letting me, and I appreciate all you're doing, but I'm not ready for what you're trying to do right now.
Right.
Can you give me a second? And can I call you and let you know when I am ready?
That's good. I like that. I might have to use that more often. No, but it's true, because it also boils down to like respecting yourself, respecting, boundaries you want for yourself. And plus, it's part of healing. When you're trying to heal mentally and physically from any scar, sometimes you do have to take that time out. It's not isolating. It's just, I need a time out. Right. Because I just need to process this. Like I said, when I was on a whole bunch of drugs, I was walking in the walls. I was falling down. I was sliding down walls. I almost fell down the flight of stairs. No one knew all of that except for the people who were right here with me. Like my sister seen it, my son seen it, and my husband. They only knew that. So people from the outside, because I wasn't talking as much as I normally do, I think I offended. I know I offended a couple of people, and it was like I had to tell them, like, it's no, I'm not trying to be offensive. It's just the
Right.
fact that I'm trying to heal. I'm
I'm
trying to
trying to get
get through
through
this.
it. I'm
Yeah,
trying to get through it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I'm I'm trying to do this. And
And not to feel guilty,
right,
because I think sometimes we get into the whole trying to then justify ourselves like
right.
over and over again. It's like, no, I don't have to keep on telling you this.
You don't.
It's like I'm done. Like this is where I'm
Yeah,
at. You got to respect it, or either, regardless, I'm not going to talk to you right now.
right.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much. And so, before we leave, I want two things from you. And that is number one, you had a particular song. I'm going to let you tell the name of the song. So, basically, everyone, when I do these reels for certain people who come on as guests and they give me a particular song, that's the song that means something to the guest. So, yeah, so I'm gonna let Nakia explain her song, the name of it, why she chose it. And then also I want Nakia to leave one word that can help someone who is healing from their wounds. One word and why you chose that word.
Okay, the song I chose, and it makes me emotional.
It's okay.
It's called Goodness of God. And I think multiple people sang it, but the one I prefer is the one sung by CeCe Winans. And it's like no matter what you've been through or what you're going through, God is faithful. And
Right.
that's all she's it's a part of the song where she says, all my life you have been faithful. You've been so, so good. With every breath that I'm able, I will sing of the goodness of God. And so I just thought, like, every time I hear it and she sings it, it makes me emotional because we're all survivors of something.
Right.
And God is so good because it took God to get us through it. So when I hear that song, and that, like I told y'all, I only knew I was gonna graduate from college. If
Right.
you were to tell me I would be sitting here and you will be talking to me because you wanted to hear what I had to say on a topic,
Mm.
or that I've done half the stuff that I've done. Like, it's funny to me because people be like, you really just kind of downplay. So I don't, it's kind of funny because I still see myself as just a regular, and people like,
Right.
you're really not regular. But I feel like when you operate in your purpose,
Right.
nothing it's like God is good, you using what God gave you, but I feel like you give God the honor for that. I'm not getting puffed up about it because,
Mm-hmm.
that's a process in itself because some days I don't even feel like it.
Right.
But, so when I hear that song, and it's so funny, I have a friend at my new job. I was like, have you heard this song? And when I started talking about it, she started crying. I started crying. We was just like, thank you, Lord. But God is just faithful. And it just reminds me all the time that God is faithful. The one word to lead the audience, just be. And when that's two words. So be is the word. Um, to me, if you allow yourself just to be, you're not overextending yourself or doing anything. If you're sad, be sad.
Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to cry. This honestly was a lot for me. I am doing it in front of you now because the old me would have just probably turned my camera off, or just it would have been something, but I would not have allowed to see you. I would not allow you to see me express the emotion that I expressed
Mm-hmm.
because I would have been too much in my head about it. But just be in the moment, and just because what I'm learning from just being mindful and being in the moment, there are so many lessons that kind of come, and so many things that I see in a different way just because I'm
Right.
focusing more on something in particular and not running to something or
Mm-hmm.
looking behind me. It is, I just feel like I'm hyper aware of what's going on, and just I'm a happier person because I'm not stressed about what I didn't do, what I did do. I still have moments, But
Right.
the those moments are few and far between. Like, okay, I'm stopping. I'm not working at this. Okay, I'm gonna stop this. I'm gonna go do this now. So just be. If you sad, be sad. If you need to be alone, be alone. If you need to be around people, be around people. If you need to block people, block them. Like, just be what you need to be the best you that you can be. That was
Okay.
a lot.
No, that was good. That was good. I like that. So before we conclude, yes, once again, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you. I enjoy getting information. Hopefully we can have you back on, maybe about a different topic or something. But I want to leave you with something that I always leave a person with the word. And so the word that I have for you is joyful. And the reason why I say joyful is because many of you, of course, don't know this part, but Nakia and I, as I said, we worked together at one point, and I always called her my sunshine. And so she used to laugh at like, what? I was like, because every time that I would see her, like when she smiles, it just brightened the room. And then she'll crack jokes and she's funny. And I just, when I think of her, I think of joyful. And that joy, not only has she extended to me, I know for a fact she has extended to clients that have literally had life-changing moments, and God has used her to save lives. So joy can do more than just make a person laugh or you feel a certain way when they come in. It can actually transform and heal and change lives significantly to the point of even from death. So there's plenty of people that I know that have had that felt like they were in a spiritual death, a mental death, even a physical death, but because you have helped impact their life, they feel more joyful. So I just want to leave you with that word that you remind me of joy. And I always call you my sunshine because that's what you did when you used to come to my office, even on down days. I'm like, oh, there's sunshine. So, but yeah, so I thank you again. And hopefully everyone enjoyed this episode. I definitely did. And because there's a lot of stigma behind mental health as a whole, and this was mental health awareness month, and I was like, oh my god, I can't go and not do nothing about mental health this month because this is what I love to do, and I want people to know the significance between mental health and breast cancer, and how especially PTSD, and definitely there's grief and other things as well, which we probably can talk about later, but the PTSD part was a huge piece that I wanted Nakia to speak about. So thank you again. And this concludes our episode. So thanks for coming. All right. Bye, guys.